Well, good morning, everybody. It's very exciting to be here. Good Saturday morning, I should say. And I hope very much that you've got great plans the rest of the day today. And those of you that are watching this as a recording, same goes for you all, that whatever day or time of the day you're watching, that you're going to enjoy this. So it's really an honor to be here this morning and for you all to join. And I'm excited about it. So my name is Jerry Ann Kelly, and I'm an executive director with the John Maxwell team and the CEO of a leadership development company called Intentional Leadership Solutions. I named that company intentionally because the word intentionality or intention is so important and has been so important in my life. And it's very important to our personal growth, because growth doesn't just happen, as I'm sure you know, or you're going to know in the next 45 minutes. You have to work at it. You have to be intentional about that. So by naming my company Intentional Leadership Solutions, what that did is it reminds me every time I say it, introducing myself or whatever I'm doing, is that, you know, it's important to be intentional about things in life that are important to you. So I know that we're going to get into a fantastic topic, and let's jump right in there. So today's topic about becoming the absolute best version of yourself is based on a best-selling book by John Maxwell, The 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth. Now, I do have the honor of being trained by John Maxwell and as my mentor and friend. He licenses coaches to teach particular books, and so that's why we're able to utilize the teachings from the 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth. So as you can probably tell, we can't cover all 15 laws in this very short webinar, but we are going to cover 2 of them that I think make a significant difference in your life and that are really, really good starting points for your journey to be a better person and to grow. And really what we want to do, and I'm sure you want to do because you wouldn't be on the call if you didn't, it's getting from where you are today to where you want to be, that future you. So that's really the bottom line. So the 2 laws that we're going to talk about today are the law of pain and the law of the rubber band. So let's jump in, and I'll go ahead and read the slide for those of you that might not be able to, you're just listening verbally. But the law of pain says good management of bad experiences leads to great growth. The law of the rubber band says growing to your full potential requires stretching out of your comfort zone. We're going to start with a quote from John McDonnell. It says, every problem introduces a person to himself. So every problem introduces a person to himself. So let's just think about that, what that means. So when we encounter a problem, a bad experience, a painful experience, we're likely to see a different person in that mirror. So that allows us to get to know ourselves better. And I know exactly that when it happens to me, I'm never really sure when a bad experience occurs, when something painful happens, as in the law of pain, is it going to be that little devil on my shoulder, or is it going to be the other shoulder with the little angel? And I'm working towards becoming that better person and listening to that angel on a regular basis. I hope someday, and someday, because growth never ends, may never happen, but that it becomes a habit, that I just immediately go with what that angel's response would be to that painful experience. And the thing is, pain does force us to face who we are and where we are today in our life. And so when you have painful experience, that's what happens, and the experience defines who we become. So we know some things about the law of pain, okay, that are pretty obvious, but worth stating. Everybody has painful experiences, okay? Pain does not find unique people to pick on. It does not pick and choose and let you get away with no painful experience and send a whole bunch my way. It happens to everybody. What else we know is nobody likes them. I mean, who wants a painful experience, especially if, you know, it's a particular type for your personality type. And the other unfortunate thing that we know from research is few people make bad experiences positive experiences. But you can learn to do that. You can learn to listen to that angel on that shoulder instead of that little devil. So growing to your full potential does require stretching you out of your comfort zone, which is we're going to cover in our second law. But a little bit of a story for you, a short story to kind of elaborate on how you can take a bad experience and turn it into a good experience. Let's just talk about COVID, because I'm almost positive no presentation occurs without talking about COVID. But, that was a bad experience. And I probably shouldn't be talking about it in the past tense, quite frankly, but it was a bad experience. So think back to 2020 when we all initially got put, grounded in our homes. Now, I'm a very social person. I'm a high I in the DISC assessment. I do a lot of DISC assessments, and I people are very outgoing and we like to talk, and, we're always wanting to find the next party. And, it's just, that's my personality. So being stranded at home was really tough. So I thought it would be cool. Why don't I learn to cook? At my age, I might as well start learning to cook. So I started playing around in the kitchen. And when I say learn to cook, I mean like look up how to boil eggs, kind of learn to cook. But anyway, so I was home so much and I did okay. My husband appreciated it. And we did save some money because we weren't going out to eat as much and not grilling, which is his thing to do. But so I took that painful experience and I said, let me make something of this. Let me make something. Instead of sitting around and being sad that we're quarantined and listening to the news all day long, and that just made it more depressing, let me do something with this experience that's positive. Now, a lot of people did. A lot of people picked up new habits, learned to knit, whatever they learned to do. So that's a really basic example of that. Now, what kind of turned out interesting is the cooking didn't stick with me. I don't do it now, and as much as I did it. And so as soon as the restaurants opened, boom, back we were out going about again. But what I did learn, instead of thinking, wow, I wasted all that time, I should have done something else, another, could have been a painful experience, was to appreciate other people's cooking. So when I go to a friend's house or an event or something like a potluck and I see these wonderful meals, I now know how much work it is to do that. Before, it's like, oh, this is good food, but after I tried to do those things, I can really appreciate people more. And I can add value to their lives by telling them that. And that's kind of, so I had like one lesson and a second lesson in that. But let's move on. So some days just absolutely stink. Okay. It happens to everyone, right? And think of it this way. So it's the first day of a new job. And this happens to people. It's happened to my daughter recently, actually. She kind of was up late, or think of you got up a little bit late. So you're rushing. You can't find your car keys. How are you going to get to your new job, impress your new boss, right? So I'll just use my husband's car. So you jump in your husband's car and you're all ready to get to the office and start your new job. And you're about 3/4 of the way there. And there's not enough gas in the car to finish the drive to get to work. Okay. So in that circumstance, you feel a bit like the statue in this picture, right? It's been pooped on quite a bit. I mean, you were pooped on all morning long. But the good thing about life in general is sometimes we are the pigeon and sometimes we're the statue. And they both occur. It's just a reality of life. Now, when you're the pigeon, I don't mean that you go poop on people or even statues for that matter. But that pigeon, he doesn't have to worry about getting pooped on because he's just flying around and he's very happy-go-lucky and he's eating free food probably. So it's just a reality of sometimes we're the pigeon folks and sometimes we end up the statue. But what's important, and you're going to hear this a lot, is what we do when we are the statue. So Dennis Woolley quoted saying, expecting the world to treat you fairly just because you're a good person. Okay. is a little like expecting a bull not to charge you because you're a vegetarian. So we have to kind of go with it, folks. But the great news, I think it's absolutely great news, is we can choose how to respond to all those experiences and change our outlook on that experience. So, and furthermore, you can change how you currently have outlook. So currently, how do you respond to painful experiences, bad experiences? Do you get better from those, or do you get bitter? Now, I want to take a minute right now and have you think about the most painful experience that occurred recently. Now, this can be things like you didn't get a promotion at work, or maybe you lost your job, or a big client you thought you were going to land, you didn't get, or it's just a painful experience, or any of those types of things. And just jot it down. I'm going to give you about 45 seconds to think through that. And then I'm going to come back. So just write down one experience, and I'll be right back. So after you have your painful experience jotted down or noted in your head, I want you to answer a couple questions, and just jot these questions down, because your challenge after this webinar is going to be to actually write down the 5 most recent difficult experiences or bad experiences that you had. And the first thing you're going to ask yourself is, how did you respond? So when that occurred, how did you respond? What was your initial reaction? The second question to ask yourself is, did you decide to make a change based on that painful experience or bad experience? And most importantly, if you did decide, I'm going to take this bad experience and turn it around and make a change, you had that thought in your head, right? But did you actually take action? Because no insight or lesson is worth anything at all unless you attach an action to it. And anything in personal development growth has to occur with action. All right, and the last part of that question for your painful experiences, grade yourself on a scale of A to F, typical grading scale, right? On how well you did in that painful experience. And so I'm going to challenge you to come up with 4 more after the webinar and write them down, because writing them down helps us. And then again, you're going to answer these questions. How did you respond to the painful experience? Did you make a change because of the painful experience? And if you did come up with a lesson or make a change, did you actually act on it? So those are just key things to think about, and know that in the past that you can change those type of reactions going forward. So let's move right along here. So, everybody's heard about the glass half full, half empty. What kind of person are you when you look at a glass like that? Are you a half empty or a half full type of person? So life stance can be thought as are you the kind of person that looks at things very positively when they happen, or do you kind of have a pessimistic view? Okay. Now, it's okay either way. Okay. We all know that, but it's easier for somebody that has a positive outlook to handle bad experiences than somebody that has more of a negative outlook in life. And so if you're one of those folks that tends to lean towards that negative side, the glass half empty side, then think about changing your life stance. Okay. because we know that when you live a life with a positive life stance, you will find good. You will become better and better, and the bad will become less bad, and then it'll even become better as well. So importantly, when you enhance the value of your bad experiences, you have a choice. We all have a choice, okay? And what we do with that experience. They can set you back, or you can learn from them, and that helps you grow. And I know that's probably, you're grasping that right now, right? Think of it this way. Okay, of course, in life, we say there's winners and losers. We have a choice, other than if you're, playing a sporting event and there's a winner loser score. But those that really want to grow and become that better person of themselves, you know what there's winners and learners, right? Because learning allows us to grow and to become a better person. One of the biggest pushes we get from bad experiences is making good changes after learning from the bad experience. Okay, that's tough. How do you make that good change? Okay, think of it as a bend in the road is not the end of the road unless you miss the bend, unless you miss the turn. Okay, so what happens to us rarely is the end of the road. However, many of us focus our feelings about what happened to us rather than focusing our thoughts and our actions that is going to lead us to a better life. And this is just a fact, because we respond emotionally, okay, to bad experiences or painful experiences. But you can remind yourself that when you're experiencing a bad emotion or bad experience, you're on the cusp. You are on the edge of making a really awesome change. So check your emotions and allow your emotions to be that catalyst for the change that's about to occur, that lesson that you're about to learn. So Virginia Satir says, life is not the way it's supposed to be. It's the way it is. But here's the important part of her quote: the way you cope with it is what makes the difference. And that's a big deal. Okay. I might repeat that a lot in the next short period. So, of course, importantly, we wouldn't be in this webinar if we didn't want to learn how to take a painful experience via the law of pain, right? And turn it into a positive experience. And I believe that developing and enhancing your creativity allows you to come up with a good idea, a good way to turn that bad experience into a learning experience. I'll give you an example that's actually straight from John's book. There's a farmer, and he mostly worked with chickens, and they, of course, eggs and chickens themselves. And every year, twice a year sometimes, his whole farm would flood. He just lived in a floodplain, and bless his heart, he would lose some of his chickens. And even a couple times over the years, he didn't rescue any of them. And of course, those are all bad experiences. Part of his livelihood is those chickens. And every time it floods, he loses some of his flock, or even worse than that, all of his flock. And finally, the last time it flooded, and he did lose all of the flock, the whole, chicken coop went floating down with the flood. He said to his wife, I just don't know if I can do this anymore. And his wife's sitting there, and being the creative person that she is, she said, why don't you buy ducks? And so that is just one way. And so I can sometimes say to myself, buy a duck, okay? Which is code for, come on, there's a creative solution to this bad experience. And again, how I respond to it, whether or not I act on it, really ends up being the story that you want to be told. Now, I've listed 7 things on this slide that you can do when you're working through that painful experience. So you do want to define the problem, right? Well, it rains at least once or twice a year for the farmer, okay? And he lives in a flood zone, okay? And his emotions when he loses those chickens. Number two, understand your emotion. It could range from anything from, financial loss and pain, or maybe he got close to a couple chickens and named them, and he was just really sad that he lost Fred. And so, but you need to check that emotion, because our emotions are going to drive us to make a change. What is the lesson? Well, the lesson here is the lesson is it's going to flood, right? And he's going to keep experiencing these losses. So what's the desired change? Well, a couple things. Could he move to a higher ground? Maybe possibly not. And then brainstorm other pathways. What are the other solutions? And ask for input like he did from his wife, right? And then implement a course of action, which would be actually going and buying the ducks. So really simple analogy for you to kind of think on. So how else do we turn pain into gain? Well, we want to embrace those bad experiences. Charles Kettering, who was the head of General Motors, said, "You will never stub your toe standing still." True, right? The faster you go, the more chance you have of stubbing your toe. But at the same time, right, more chance you have of getting somewhere. So, think about that. Okay. This is a little bit about taking risks, right? It's really hard to see during the actual experience, like when you're hot in the moment. But when you reflect and process what you learn, it's more possible after it happens. Now, if you are astute enough in that emotional state right when it happens, that'd be great. Okay. I personally have not achieved that ability. I have learned to sit back for a little bit and try to ignore that little devil on my shoulder and listen to the angel and not respond. Now, immediately having a positive, we're all working on that. I'm working on that. Because, where there is a struggle, where there is no struggle, there is no progress. So that struggle is there, right? So we're all going to have difficulties. We talked about that in the first couple of slides. And we all have an option to learn from them or not, right? So what do you choose? Do you want to take that risk for that bigger gain? Do you want to go ahead and move faster to get to the next place in your life? Even if you do stub your toe along the way, taking risks is very scary. So, but let's remember our goal. What we're here today to talk about is becoming the very best, absolute best version of yourself. How do you get from here, from where you are today, to where you want to be? That's by making choices and choosing the option to turn a bad experience into a good experience. That's just one way. So in this law, we grow from learning from these painful experiences and turning them into something that we can actually take action on. And it's a positive outcome. Number 4, make good changes after learning from the bad experiences, okay? And we can't change anything unless we face it first, right? Like, let's talk about somebody that has some really, really poor eating habits, and they're a little bit overweight, and they don't exercise. And they go to the doctor, and every annual physical, the doctor shows them their labs and reminds them, your this and this is up and this is up. Your cholesterol's a little high. You started exercising. Well, no. Are you still eating, junk food and whatnot on a regular basis? Or have you started like adding some vegetables? Oh, no. I don't want to do that. Right. So intellectually, this person knows they need to make a change, right, to their lifestyle before something bad happens. But yeah, their heart's not really in it. Right? They're not feeling it. So then one day the worst thing possible happens, right? They have a massive heart attack. Now, in the throes of that heart attack, they can sense what's going on, and their emotion kicks in. They realize they almost died. They almost left the world without doing everything they wanted to do. They almost abandoned their loved ones. Now, this becomes an emotional response, kind of like fight or flight, right? And so that fight, that emotional response says, I am going to change my life. This horrible heart attack I had, this horrible bad experience. When it became emotional for this person instead of just intellectual, that's when the change occurred. So you want to embrace your emotions, right? Athletes are very similar in kind of a different way, but very similar. You know, they work out. A true athlete, someone that wants to go to the Olympics and be the best of the best of all of their sport, they'll still work out and practice in pain through an injury because they know they've got their eye on the pot. They've got the eye on the gold medal, and that it's going to take some pain to get where they want to be. A little bit like that. So the next time you find yourself in the midst of a bad experience, I wish I could tell you, I hope you never have them, but you're going to. Remind yourself that you are on the cusp of an opportunity to change and grow. You have that option to take that and turn it into a positive experience. I like to think that my emotions, when they rise up inside, that they're the catalyst for change. So let those emotions be the catalyst for change. And then think through how you make that change and what you're going to do. And then most importantly, as we've talked about, take action on that change. The fifth way that John talks about in his book to turn pain into gain is you've got to take responsibility for your life. Now, I know we talked earlier about pain happens to everyone, and that's true. And you really can't control it. Life is what it is, folks. But you've got to realize you have to take responsibility for what part of that, right? It's that decision to turn that painful experience, which is inevitable, right, into a good experience. And you can also say, hey, that was pretty horrible, but there's people that are way worse off. So if your job's eliminated, there's people out there that, not only was their job eliminated, but they actually didn't have the skills to really do anything. They're worse off, right? So you don't want to give up. You want to grow up. But what you really don't want to do, as per this statement on the slide, is become woe is me, okay? It's only about a quarter of an inch between why me and woe is me. So I wouldn't want to see any of you today listening or to the recording or live become one of those woe is me. And I don't think you will, or you wouldn't be here today looking for some advice and some help with growing to be that better person. I love this saying, action changes things, okay? So when you think about the spectrum of how you have viewed bad experiences in your past, and knowing now that taking a great advantage of that painful experience can become a positive thing, okay? Recognizing your emotions and owning them when these experiences happen, it starts to create a positive feeling, but you've got to act on that positive feeling, right? There's numerous ways to go forward, but here's a few things that you can do when you have that experience. And we talked about them. I'm just going to reiterate them again. Get input from others. Maybe what you perceived as a bad experience, you didn't really perceive correctly, or it wasn't intended the way it came out. So it's okay to ask other people their opinion. We already said, and I don't want you to forget it, understand your emotions and listen to them. And then think about your desired change you want to have. And think about what positive change you can have. Make sure it's positive. Maybe it's going to be a positive for you, or maybe it's going to be a positive for others. Above all, you've got to remember that it is your choice of what you do. And it's also your choice to act, because personal growth requires action. It's that simple. It's not as difficult as that. And I'm going to add intentional action. So let's move on to the rubber band theory, the law of the rubber band. Growth stops when you lose the tension between where you are now and where you could be. So I could ask you guys the question, do you want to grow? Right? And I'm sure there'd be a resounding yes, 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 raise of hands and whatnot. So, and we know that you're investing your time, you're taking action right now in a growth plan. This is a start of a growth plan. But the truth of the matter is, for most of us, we really avoid that pressure, okay, when we're talking about the tension, right? Because we don't want to feel uncomfortable. We've been taught over and over again that the comfort is a place that's desired and strived for. So when you're comfortable, that's where you want to be. But let me try to challenge you here and say, here it goes. Ready? I'm going to challenge you. All living things grow, and that requires stretching. So unless you've decided you don't want to grow and you do want to just stay where you are in life, you're going to have some tension and some stretching going on, hence the law of the rubber band. So let's look at rubber bands, okay? So the left-hand corner, those are rubber bands, okay? The bottom corner, that's a stretched rubber band that's about to take action. Now, hopefully this guy is not slinging it at a person. Maybe he's just doing target practice. Let's think of it that way. See the positive outlook. He's not trying to hit somebody across the room. But what good are the rubber bands in the left-hand corner? What are they good for when they're just sitting there? The only thing I can come up with, as I've done this presentation a few times, is that they're kind of pretty. Those are anyway, right? They're just sitting there. But what else can you do with a rubber band if it's just in its natural, in that normal, comfortable state? Nothing, okay? Rubber bands are only useful when they're stretched, right? So you wouldn't be where you are and who you are today without some form of tension or stretching having taken place. So let's think about kids in college, for instance. They're stretched when they go to college, right? They're stretched because now they're learning to live alone. In some cases, they're learning to fend for themselves, take care of money. That all those things are stretching. They have to get up and go to class. They have to pass class. So they're being stretched. And more than likely, many of them, including myself, I think, was I'm going to just stretch my rubber band enough, just enough to get that diploma. I mean, right? Because once I get that diploma, I've arrived, right? After all, I am grown up now, right? But the truth is, we should continue growing throughout our lives. Now, college, yes, let's get that diploma. But when we get out of college, it's important to keep growing. And it does. I will acknowledge it and be honest with it. Growth is painful. And it's uncomfortable because it's going to require some change, right? It's going to ask you to do some things you've never done. But don't treat growth like a college diploma. Get past that. You need to grow in order to get where you want to be. So here's the scary statistic for you that few people today, and this survey was done, it's a kind of 2003, so it's pretty old, but I tried to find newer statistics, and what I found was very, very similar numbers. But so 33% of high school graduates never read another book the rest of their lives. Really? 42% of college graduates never read another book in their life. That's pretty sad, because reading books is part of stretching ourselves and improving, right? Arnold Bennett says in the quote that I've used here, the real tragedy is the tragedy of the man who never in his life braces himself for his one supreme effort, who never stretches to his full capacity and never stands up for his full stature. I mean, that's sad tragedy, right? not utilizing your the gifts that you've been giving and not stretching yourself. If you look around and you look at really successful people, they're constantly learning and adapting, right? They do let their barriers down and they're willing to change things about themselves in order to be better, happier, and more productive. So I've never seen a super successful person that wasn't like restless because they're waiting for that next action to take. They're waiting to what's going to stretch them next, to the point that they'll go find something that's going to stretch them and get them to a different point in their life. Changing does mean, right, that we have to accept the choices that we made in the past. And we have to understand that maybe some of them weren't the best. And if those choices are tied up in your ego, it can be especially difficult to move past them. But the best people, even if tied up in their ego, will just move past this in stride. So the whole idea here with this band, the rubber band, is to increase your capacity. Stretching yourself creates a possibility of growth and learning. And that's what we want, right? So when you challenge yourself to reach new goals, and mind you, these goals should be outside of your comfort zone. They need to be stretchy, but still attainable. You set yourself up to accomplish many amazing things. So think of it this way. I'm way an employee's way overqualified for the job, right? And they go to their employer and they say, I know I'm overqualified, but I really want this position on the line, making widgets. And I promise I'll only use half of my ability, so I won't be overqualified. That's just so, right? And it's sad that it's becoming more and more prevalent in our society today, that people aren't really moving past their average, right? They just are okay being average. Now, I want to read to you right out of the book. I don't know if I could see that. Ooh, a little hard. It's backwards too. But the 15 Invaluable Laws, okay? Just a couple things about average that I think are kind of funny and neat to hear. Average is the top of the bottom, the best of the worst, the bottom of the top, the worst of the best. You got all that? Which of these are you? Are you average? Being average is a lazy person's cop-out. It's lacking the guts to take a stand in life. It's living by default. It's letting life just happen. It's not stretching yourself. So imagine this tombstone of an average person. Here lies Mr. and Mrs. Average. Here lies the remains of what might have been, except for their belief that they were only average. Another truth about tension, settling for the status quo ultimately leads to dissatisfaction. So settling for being average. So Mark Twain says, 20 years from now, you will be more disappointed by the things you didn't do than the ones that you did. So throw off the bow lines, sail away to the safe harbor. Catch the trade winds in your sails. Dream, explore, and discover, right? Get out there. Explore, dream, and discover. So it's true that being out of your comfort zone feels good, but it's going to lead to mediocrity and later dissatisfaction if you don't. All right. Maslow said, and I'll paraphrase, if you plan on being anything less than what you are capable of, you'll probably be unhappy in the days of your life. And I think that's depressing to sit and think, I'm just going to be average and I'm not going to really do anything that impacts myself or others. So you guys leave behind what's familiar, safe, and secure. That's what I'm asking. Leave it behind and give up those excuses and push forward. Stretch that rubber band. That's what we want to see. And that does take courage, and it will take you out of your comfort zone. And many people have people that will help them through that change. So the third thing that we know about, or truth about tension, is stretching always starts from the inside out. It's an inside job. So the real process of growth begins with your thoughts. and your thoughts become words. And then what happens? Your words will become emotions, right? And then ideally, they will become actions, as we've talked about. It's kind of that choice to act or not act, to respond or not respond, right? But here's the crazy thing. All of life, okay, except for mankind, humans, grow to their full potential, just naturally. They do. Think about a tree. It just keeps growing and growing and growing, okay? Mankind, sometimes we circumvent that process of growth by choosing to stay where we are. But a tree doesn't. A tree doesn't just suddenly decide after it's, 10 feet tall, hey, I'm going to stop growing. No, no way. But for whatever reason, and as I said, it's becoming more common in society than I'd like to think, we do make that choice to stop growing. And I just think it's crazy. So the inside job is an internal measurement that allows you to evaluate you against what you're capable of. One more time. It allows you to evaluate you against what you are capable of. The fourth truth about tension is stretching always requires change, right? It will always. Many things, anything good in life requires some sort of change, right? Because it's going to put us out of our comfort zone, right? Couple of things I would just want to share with you. One statement that sticks with me a lot is you can't improve and avoid change at the same time. So if you're avoiding change, you're not improving. You're not getting to that next step in life. You're not growing. But remember, stop, develop, and practice for me too. Stop looking over your shoulder, okay? Yesterday ended at midnight, okay? I don't need to look over my shoulder and think about what happened in the past. I don't need to do it. It's not going to help you. Now, when we talked about writing down those 5 painful experiences, you're doing a reflecting and evaluating, but stop looking over your shoulder, folks, okay? And then I'm going to ask you to develop your reach muscle, okay? Your reach muscle, reaching for the stars, right? And this is really saying that reach muscle, you know what he is or she is? It's that one taking risks in life, okay? Now, risks are really, really scary. And I realize that. And I know you realize that. But they get us really, really far in life. People who take risks, it is known, people who take risks learn more and faster than those that don't. And I think that's a given, kind of, that if you're taking risks, you are stretching, you are learning. And if it doesn't work out, then it goes back to the other law of pain and you learn from that. And if it does work out, well, hey, great. What's the next risk that you're going to take? So here's another thought to leave with you. If you're satisfied with what you did 5 years ago, and you look just like you looked 5 years ago, you're doing what you were doing 5 years ago, there's no change, then you're not growing. And it's time to make that change. But I know anybody that's listening to this is here because they are going to make those changes in life and they're learning about the laws. Now, there's 3 more truths about tension. The fifth one is stretching sets you apart from others. Like we touched on earlier, you have noticed that people seem some people are become okay with mediocrity, okay, and they're satisfied with that. That's their personal concession to be less than their best. It was a choice. It was an option that they chose. You don't have to take that option. Successful people set themselves apart from a crowd by going over and beyond what everybody else is doing. And you can see those. You can tell they're stretched to get better. And what's super awesome, one of the reasons I love this part is, as I stretch to get better, I become infectious to others. So as you take your journey, your growth journey, and you stretch, those around you will start to see that, and they'll want a part of it. You know, they're not going to be left behind. They're going to see you, that you've set yourself above everybody else, and you are learning to stretch and you're growing. Number 6 says stretching can become a lifestyle. And I don't mean yoga stretching. If you won't be better tomorrow than you were today, then what do you need tomorrow for? It's almost kind of funny, right? If you won't be better tomorrow than you are today, what do I need tomorrow for, right? So when you stop stretching, you stop growing. And I, for one, am going to continue stretching and growing as long as I can. So there's just no place to personally stop and rest on my laurels. I mean, that's not me, and I don't think it's anybody listening today either. And there's some things that you can intentionally do, simple things, to stretch yourself every day. And one of those is reading. We talked about the few number of people that have read books after college. You know, don't be one of those people. Reading a book on something new, that's stretching you. That's teaching you something new. And you make that reading a daily habit, an intentional habit to read on a topic that maybe you don't know, or maybe you're going to read on growth, or spend time dedicating it to, like you are this morning. That's fantastic. That's stretching yourself to think differently. And that's not that painful, right? It's not one of those painful rubber band stretching things. Or reflecting. That's that's my second thing that I intentionally make sure I do every day, is reflect on yesterday. This is a time I'm looking a little bit over my shoulder, but I'm looking over my shoulder to look for things that I could have done differently, and what happened really well that I want to repeat, and making sure that I did impact somebody's life. I added value to somebody's life, because that's an important thing for me personally, is to add value every day to someone. Now, the 7th truth about tension is stretching gives you a shot at significance. See, in order to grow yourself, you must first know yourself, okay? So you need to know where you are in that gap between good and great. Here's good and here's great. How big is that gap for you between the two? And what can you do to close that gap so you do go from good to great, right? And how willing are you to make that gap smaller, right? So if you're going to stretch, who are you going to impact today? Who is that you've intentionally invested in today that is making a difference in them, but also in you? John says, and I'm going to read this so I get it exactly right. And this is another one of those tricky ones, so listen up. I want to make a difference doing something that makes a difference at a time that makes difference with people who make a difference. So people who are committed to stretching themselves, you guys, will make a difference. One last note about the rubber band related to goals. Now, and it's a pretty simple note, but I do want to take a second to point it out, okay? That you want your goals to stretch, okay? Remember when the rubber bands were laying still, okay? And you set a goal in the still rubber band that's a perfect circle. All right, that's not really setting a goal, okay? That's staying average, right? But you want to stretch that goal. You want to stretch yourself when you set that goal so that you feel a little bit of the pain and it's a stretch, but you don't want to stretch it so much you end up flinging the rubber band across the room and hitting somebody, okay? So just think about when you're setting goals, and if you say, I'm going to read every day, okay? Is it really realistic to say I'm going to read for 2 hours every day? You know, that rubber band is going to break. You know, you need to make it manageable, but a stretch. If you don't read every day and you make that goal, I'm going to read 20 minutes every day, that's, you know, you're stretching because you're creating a new habit. We talked a little bit about dreams, and the really unbecoming thing is that it is known that most people, all people have a dream, okay? You have a dream. The problem is in society now, very few people achieve their dream, or for that matter, even go after it. So think back to your dream, okay? Are you pursuing that vision, that purpose in life? So don't let this become you. Don't become the person that doesn't pursue their dream, okay? Become the person you want to become. Become that better person of yourself, all right? And stick with it. And I want you to pat yourself on the back right now because you took that action, that first step in your growth journey, deciding to listen to 2 of the laws of invaluable growth, deciding to dedicate this 45 minutes or so to hearing about the 2 of the laws that can make an impact and change on your life and others around you. So as you deal with daily situations, whether it's business or personal, doesn't matter, you're going to have several painful experiences, right? How you choose to deal with those determine how positively or negatively impact your circumstances and influence those around you, as we talked about, kind of a closing note. So what I'm really trying to say, when life gives you lemons, remember the tension of the rubber band and make lemonade, okay? So, and where are you amongst these on the slide? Are you the tall growing tree, or are you happy just staying as that, the middle one, maybe that is like half grown? Where do you want to be? So today we touched on just 2 of John's 15 invaluable laws. I'm going to be doing a mastermind, which is kind of like a book study of the whole book. And I'm going to be doing this in Asheboro starting in January. So if you're interested in digging deeper and deeper into all 15 laws, I will be doing that session. If you are not able or you're not local to the Asheboro area, then I also do these on a virtual basis. And all you have to do is reach out. Maybe you can get a group of your employees together or your friends that all have a little mission to grow. And we can dig into those 15 laws as well. So I'm going to close with this. You see, it's been an honor, a privilege to be here today. And as I told you at the beginning, personal growth and development has really made a difference in my life and being intentional about it. And honestly, I'm just a personal growth junkie, a real live junkie. And I'm okay with that. All right. And I think too, once you start seeing the difference just by applying these 2 laws that we talked about, that you're going to see a really positive future going forward. So again, thank you so much for attending. And please reach out if you have any questions or there's anything I can clarify for you. And have a fantastic day. Take care. Bye-bye.